slime from the bottom up.
We were talking about that. There was an interesting article that we had. I don't know where it is in the stack, but actually the Democrats sent out a thing threatening Democrat voters, like, we noticed that you hadn't voted, giving them a grade, as if they were in school, and say, we're going to be watching as if it's going to go on their permanent record. I mean, resorting back to this fear that is installed in everybody at the government schools about, they're going to give you a grade and they're going to put it on your permanent record if you don't show up and vote. Doing that to people that they believe are going to reliably vote Democrat.
Well, Monsanto and the government are basically the same thing, right? It reminds me of, I believe it was Prop 37, the GMO labeling initiative in California. Do you know what the FDA actually didn't call out Monsanto on, but kind of did? Monsanto went around with flyers with an FDA logo with a fake quote that didn't exist from the FDA, claiming it was from the FDA, saying GMOs are 100% natural and they're the same exact thing as conventional food. And they put it in a flyer, and they were like, the FDA thinks GMO labeling is bad. It's the same thing as natural food. And they sent it all out. They sent out like tens of thousands, maybe even hundreds of thousands of these flyers. And I was on the press call. LA Times, New York Times, Washington Post, me, and like 2 other organizations, and they were calling them out, the individuals that were positioning for GMO labeling, saying, hey, look, look, LA Times, look, New York Times, this is illegal. This is a federal crime. I mean, we looked at an example for one example where this woman, she did mail fraud because she used a federal symbol on her mail to scam people, and she went to jail for like 25 years. And Monsanto puts an FDA seal, a fake quote from the FDA. And what does the New York Times, the LA Times, Washington Post, all those guys, what do? They don't say, like, Monsanto criminally justifies, anti-GMO labeling. No, they were like, pro-GMO labeling group claims Monsanto may have done something wrong, but probably not.
Well, there's a different standard for them, of course, just like there's a different standard for HSBC or for Bank of America. Whenever they get caught laundering money for drug cartels, millions or billions of dollars, they basically get a small fine and are let go. Meanwhile, we see small businesses accused of structuring deposits. So they say, well, we think that you had more money and you were holding it back so that you wouldn't get to the magical $10,000 deposit number, so that you want to avoid some paperwork. So we think you're holding that back. So we're just going to seize all of your cash.
Oh, yeah.
That's the difference in the rules. I think it was amazing that just this last week, and we had it on our trailer, one of these trailers bringing us in here, $20 billion in Washington that was basically on a black budget. They give these different bureaucracies and federal employees, they just broke. They give them these credit cards, and as long as they make quote-unquote micro purchases of under $3,000 that doesn't get reported, aren't they structuring their purchases the same as these businesses are accused of structuring their deposits? These guys are definitely structuring their purchases to avoid exactly $30,000 at Starbucks, but $20 billion, $3,000 or less at a time, and nobody can see where it's going. I mean, they're doing exactly the same thing that they're then accusing small businesses of. Many of them are not doing that. Many of them are just making deposits as the money comes in or when they can make it to the bank or whatever. They're not deliberately trying to hide money from the IRS. I mean, that money is in the banking system anyway, so it certainly is reported as income when they put it in the bank.
Well, of course, the IRS can be criminals. It's perfectly fine.
Right, not we the people.
Just a double standard, yes.
But if you make $5,000 more than you say on your income statement because you had to buy bare essentials for your family, then you're going to go to jail.
Yeah.
But they can buy billions of dollars of black assets, and they can go to Starbucks and buy $30,000 on your bill, and Obama can stay in the nicest hotels and resorts, and so can Bill Clinton, and everything's fine. But isn't it so weird that there's this a facade around us that there's some type of support for these criminals? I don't think there is. I think the fake support through MSNBC and everything is purported to, it's like pushed on us like mind beams, like everyone loves Obama. But we read the polls, we read the stats, no one does. We read the polls and the stats on these candidates. We know who's going to win. We know that even a facade of being real is going to get people in office. I mean, look at all the Republicans running right now just saying, Obama's bad. Yes, and then everyone loves them. It's so simple because there's no real support. So it's like we're battling against these media entities that puff themselves up. It's like an animal in the wild, or a dog. What does a dog do, or a cat even, when they're in the wild and they're going to be attacked? They go like this, and their fur raises up, and they show their fangs and everything, and it looks like a bigger animal. Or a bear stands up like this. That's actually how you defeat other animals, is you go like that as well. It's just this fake fake support. The media, MSNBC specifically, I hate them the most, they just kind of puff up their fur and puff up their teeth and make themselves look intimidating when they're worthless. They have nothing.
Well, they're getting a lot of money. Yeah, they're getting a lot of money out of this election. I mean, they're spending $4 billion on ads, most of that going to companies like MSNBC or the major 3 networks. And so they have a vested interest in this political system, $4 billion worth just in this election. And we see the amount of money that's being spent on the elections going up exponentially. Why? Because it's getting pulled into this black hole of power and influence in Washington. No campaign finance reform is going to stop that. You've got to stop the power that's in Washington. You've got to find some way to divide that. That was the fundamental principle this country was built on, was divided power. But they have consolidated power, and then they work on dividing the people. And so, of course, we now have Mary Landrieu saying this is just because you don't like blacks and women. But they're running from Obama, Leanne, and that's the key thing that we wanted to point out in this segment right here is just how desperate they are to distance themselves. We can see that in the Kentucky race, can't we?
Right, and will that strategy work? Can they run fast enough? Now, even just last year when everyone was so pumped about Obamacare and they thought it was just going to be this great thing, and the president was able to get this universal health care, and they said that the Democratic strategy would be to own Obamacare, and now no one's talking about it. And in fact, they have pushed back the fees. People won't even find out how much their health care is going to cost until after the election. And those exemptions, remember we were reporting last year about, oh my goodness, all of these exemptions because we knew it wouldn't work, exemptions for businesses, exemptions for those people who wanted to keep their plan. Well, all of those are also set to expire right after the election. So everyone's going to find out just what Obamacare is really all about. So no one's touching it. Just like they're really silent on immigration ever since everyone was pointing out how wide open the borders are and how all of these, because of the fact that sweeping amnesty is about to be passed, there is just this influx of illegal immigrant children coming in, and where are we putting them? And then there's these diseases, and why do we have homeless veterans, and the veterans can't get into the VA, but yet we're getting these 5-star hotels for people who aren't even citizens of this country, and paying double to foster these kids than what we pay to foster American children. So just all sorts of bad news for this immigration, and now no one's talking about it, and they're probably just going to let Obama, because he is so unpopular, he'll just get his pen and his phone and pass this sweeping immigration reform after the election. And then once again, if that doesn't work out, they can blame it on Obama. Well,
it's become a given that the political party that's in power is going to lose support in midterm elections. Why is that? It's because they're betraying their base. I mean, look at how Obama has betrayed his base. If Obamacare is good for his base even, wouldn't he let these numbers come out before the election? Wouldn't he want people to see what their premiums are going to be if they were in fact going to go down? Wouldn't he want, and he and his Hollywood supporters, wouldn't they want to have a film about how Obama had brought the out-of-control intelligence agencies and spying? Wouldn't they like to see how he stopped that? Oh, he didn't. That's right. That's right. He didn't do that, did he? So they got to hide that until after the election.
Right. They don't want to hurt the Dems.
Well, here's some real simple proof that Obamacare will not work, outside of the other 50,000 proofs that already exist. Look at the handling of the Ebola situation by the government. Look at the lack of basic protective gear in the hospitals given to the nurses. Look at the lack of basic understanding by the CDC on how to control it. Look at the lack of understanding and actual prosecution of anything. Look at the way they mishandled it to the point now where they're saying there's going to be at least a few cases in every single major city. Gee, that's the same system that Obamacare is built upon. Worship the government will protect you. Well, guess what? The government did not protect you. The government is not going to protect you.
And we had a story this week about scientists saying 130 cases by the end of the year. We see the government ordering massive quantities of hazmat suits. So this is something, exactly, secretly. They're not making it. Meanwhile, they're telling everyone it's under control, not going to happen, not going to come to the U.S. I mean, the day that he made that announcement at the CDC in Atlanta, that was when the story broke that this Lakeland Industries or whatever the company was, it sold 160,000 hazmat suits to the U.S. government. That was when Paul Watson broke that story. Yeah. So, you know, at the same time you say it's not coming to the U.S., they're buying massive amounts.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands just to Dallas.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you think Obamacare is going to save you, look at what the government has saved you from with Ebola. They've helped you to such a large degree that they're just shipping people here now from Africa with Ebola, saying everything's fine. The major scientists say, oh, it's great, it's amazing, ship them all here. Obamacare is going to be a failure, proven 100% by the response to Ebola and a million other things.
Absolutely, because it's about open borders. That's the most important thing. Let's go to Jakari. This, of course, is a live broadcast, and we're taking your questions and comments on Twitter. And right now, we've got Jakari Jackson at the Twitter station looking at your tweets. Jakari, what have you got?
Like we're having some.
Oh, I think we don't have him on audio. Hang on a second.
Do you have me on?
Oh,
okay.
Okay, there we go.
We got you.
Right.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
A little bit of technical difficulty. We have this live broadcast that we definitely appreciate everybody joining us. Infowars.com/show. And we had a tweet. A guy sent out Privacy Plate. He had the comment, super live show tonight. If I had any money, I'd get your shirt, referencing Joe Biggs' shirt. So Privacy Plate, send us an email at Infowars. Tips at Infowars, at the writers, or Joe Biggs at the Infowars address, and we'll try to get you a t-shirt, put your size and all that stuff in there. Meanwhile, you can also go to the Infowars shop and pick up some of our great gear there. We have one of our newer shirts, the Resist Tyranny shirt, and also the Molon Labe hats and all the things available there. And I have a question, I guess, for Anthony. Jonathan Jonas asked the question, what's a good cure for the Ebola virus? And I know that's not so much a cure-all for the Ebola virus, but Anthony, I think you did put out that article a few weeks ago talking about natural remedies to combat the Ebola virus.
Yeah, absolutely. I wouldn't go ahead and say there's going to be a quote-unquote cure for the Ebola virus, because research does exist and there is information out there, but the problem is they take these natural compounds, they look at them like the 2010 Harvard research, which details mannose binding lectins. And so that's something that you genealogically produce with a bolstered immune system. Mannose binding lectins, which are these compounds that basically disable the Ebola virus when it comes to studies in rats. So the rats were given, that was actually mice. Mice were given expanded mannose binding lectins through a bolstered immune system, and they were able to disable the replication of the Ebola virus. Now, how do you do that? You have a bolstered immune system, which comes down to the function of vitamins and minerals, nutrients, and everything like that. I do think there's a lot of research on something called genistein, which is from soy. I do think there is a lot of research out there that shows some interesting things about the use of colloidal silver, and I do think there's some interesting research out there for a number of other things, such as things that are found in algae, which have been shown in Harvard research, Princeton research, to induce mannose binding lectins. But the problem is, the reason it kills a certain percentage of people, 70% in some of the African countries where it was experienced, those people have disabled immune systems. So their genes have been shut off through environmental factors to not be able to produce the lectins that are necessary to attack the actual virus and stop its replication. So it's internal change that's going to stop it. It's feeding yourself the natural nutrients you need. It's not going to get a super drug, which can actually help you. The problem is, if you build your own defenses, those people that aren't dying from it or aren't even really getting it, it's their immune system shutting it down right away. And here's the key thing. We shouldn't just be worrying, how do I treat Ebola? We shouldn't just be worrying, how do I treat bird flu? We should just be worrying, how do we treat ourselves to protect against all strains of everything?
Exactly.
Because if your immune system is there, if you have those mannose binding lectins, you can inactivate pretty much all the viruses it comes in contact with. So that is key, to activate your own defenses at all times.
And we just had an article on Infowars.com last week or so, that scientist who is basically questioning whether or not people who had not become symptomatic could still transmit Ebola. He pointed out that in a study, 13% of the people who had been exposed to it basically shut it down with their immune system and never became symptomatic. So his questions were those people, did they still have enough of this virus that they could pass it on like a typhoid Mary, even though they were not symptomatic? And we've seen the same sort of thing with experiments with mice, saying that when they modified their genetics to make them come down with the human Ebola virus, that about 20% of them did not come down with it because of their immune system.
Yes.
We also had situations where they had the epidemics get out of control with the monkeys and the laboratories. They found that even though none of the humans came down with it, they did find Ebola antibodies in the humans, which meant that they'd been exposed to that and had created an antibody to stop it. So the immune system is your first order of protection, and that's really, you want to stop it before you have these, before you come down with it, because even if you survive it, just like the nurse Nancy Wright-Ball, who
they get blood transfusions from people that have survived and build the antibodies with actual immune systems. Yeah.
Yes, but even though she survived, she says she still has peripheral neuropathy and other issues because, I mean, it's a major sickness even if you survive it.
Very deadly.
Even though they can sexually transmit Ebola. Bodily fluids they're still transmitting. Most people, after 21 days, only a certain amount of people show symptoms anyway. It could be up to 60 days. They're just letting everyone out running rampant, just spread Ebola everywhere.
Yeah.
You better